I have expressed my concern over a certain position group that some of you may be aware of. After watching a few practices, including the most we have watched of all of fall camp yesterday, I may have to eat my words. Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and appreciate all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. All summer long, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everybody every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started today. All right, let's dive right in on today's show. I was at a BYU football practice yesterday. Always appreciate the opportunity to watch the guys out there playing. And I have talked on this podcast often, and also in some of the media appearances I have made in fall camp and also leading up to training camp as well, about my concern for BYU's defensive line and their ability to compete at what I would consider to be a Big 12 quality standard. Now, last season, BYU's defensive metrics were awful. Worst sack team in the Power 5 ranks. They had, I think, an average of just over one per game. Could not stop the run, really couldn't get pressure on the quarterbacks. I know that Tyler Batty was one of the league's leaders in QB hurries. Well, that means you're only getting close to the quarterback. You're not actually bringing him down. It's nothing against Tyler. It's just a simple fact of the matter. And I felt like going into this season that BYU was trotting essentially the same group of guys back out there on the defensive front and expecting different results. Now, that should sound familiar because that is by most people's definition, or I guess the Webster definition, if you want to use that, of insanity. Doing the same thing but expecting different results. I want to say that I know it's only training camp. I know that we're a week and change into training camp. But there are some signs for this defensive line that make me think I might have to eat those words. Why? Well, first off, BYU has what I consider to be at least four full-time defensive line coaches working in different capacities. Now, the formal designations are that Sione is BYU's defensive tackles coach. Kelly Poppinga coaches up BYU's defensive ends as the defensive ends coach. Then you have Chad Kauha'aha'a, who is the senior analyst for BYU football, working mainly with BYU's defensive line. And then you have Gary Andersen, yes, the former Utah State, Oregon State, Wisconsin coach, obviously spent a long time at Utah as well. He is working as a quote-unquote consultant, or I guess you could call him I don't know what you want to term it. But the thing is, with the change of NCAA rules not that long ago, Chad Kauha'aha'a, most people call him Chad K, to be very clear. I'll probably refer to him as Chad K from here on out. And Gary Andersen, they are now allowed to do on-field coaching. Now, it was the worst kept secret in all of college football that analysts were, quote unquote, not allowed to coach, because they were coaching. But hey, it's now legal. It's now okay under the bylaws of the NCAA. BYU is invested in the coaching of this unit. And there are signs that coaching, the money they're paying all four of these guys, and they're veteran coaches. So they've played at a high level. They've coached at an extremely high level. And the early returns, based on my personal observations, are that BYU's defensive line might actually be a little bit better than I anticipated. Now, I am not going to say right now that they are going to go out there and be world beaters. They're going to be the same type of defensive line as the caliber of, let's say, a Utah. And this is going to irk some of you, I believe that Utah has at least 6 defensive tackles on their roster right now that are going to be NFL quality guys, and at least that many defensive ends. That's the simple truth of the matter of what Utah has at their disposal on the defensive front. Could BYU use 2 or 3 of those guys? Yeah, one of them, John Henry Daly, was on BYU's roster just last year. I don't know, I think it was a semester before that. Logan Fano left BYU after being on that defensive line. Yes, BYU could use those guys, but BYU only has who they have. And I am seeing signs that BYU's defensive front, the coaching up of these guys, is going a long way towards them putting a better product on the field. Once again, I'm not saying they're going to be world beaters, but I do think that this is going to be a better defensive line than I truly anticipated going into training camp. Why do I have this optimism? Well, first off, in practice, and we got to watch yesterday, I would estimate 40 minutes of practice is what we got to watch. We got to watch the entirety of their team period, which featured at least 8 drives. There were kind of miniature drives as part of that. And I saw multiple pressures from BYU on defense. Now, some of them were linebackers coming off the edge in terms of getting that pressure, but I also saw the defensive tackles for BYU doing some stuff up front, really holding the edge. It felt like a defensive end. I thought Tyler Batty has proven time and time again that he maybe is the most valuable defensive lineman the BYU has. And the simple fact of the matter is the statistics don't back up what he does on the field. He faces so many double teams and so much extra attention because of his prowess at defensive end that it feels like teams and BYU's offense scheme against him versus having to scheme for everybody. But I am seeing signs that the defensive tackles, guys like John Nelson, Joshua Singh, Blake Mangelson, David Latu, along that defensive front, defensive tackle, are starting to show that their work in the offseason, and we're going to talk about the work that they did with the guy who helped engineer this, and Ryan Phillis in a moment, but they have done a lot of work in the weight room. I look at guys like David Latu, and he looks more svelte than he did last year. Or I'm talking about he's skinnier than he was last year. But I'm telling you, the point of attack, his ability to hold up with offensive linemen, double teams, and the like is really, really impressive. He's holding up better at a skinnier weight based on what I am seeing this year. And it's not just him. Joshua Singh, who is a truly undersized defensive tackle. They list him at 6'1", 280 pounds. He uses his natural leverage, and he has been holding up more than his own against every offensive lineman that seems to dwarf him for BYU. Same thing for John Nelson, Blake Mangelson. I like the fact that BYU's defensive tackles, while they may not be the biggest group, I think that they put out some statistics about the BYU football team and the defensive line, defensive tackles in particular. Their average height and weight is 6'2", 285. I think it was the average rate across the board. So they're not the 350-pound maulers that you see on some teams out there, most notably in the SEC. But I do think that BYU has got some nice guys on the interior who I think are going to be able to hold up better than I anticipated. I'll also add the caveat one more time. There is still a lot of work to be done. There's obviously a season ahead that will really, truly prove if what I am seeing and what I'm expecting really match up. Then on the edge for BYU, I think you're starting to see guys like Bodie Schoonover come into their own. Now, Bodie is currently running his backup to Tyler Batty, and Tyler Batty told us in his own words yesterday, I don't like coming off the field. I love playing football. I will stay out there as long as I can to play the game that I love. So obviously, it's going to maybe take some extra reps away from a guy like Bodie Schoonover, but Bodie Schoonover, Logan Latui, Nu'ule'etau Selison, there's a bunch of guys. Vili Pua, who is the son of defensive tackles coach Sione Pua, who's just home off of a mission. We have seen him running with the second string unit at defensive end. BYU needs to find some viable pass rush from those defensive ends outside of Tyler Batty. Could Ephraim Asiata, as undersized as he is right now, prove to be that? I saw a play, this goes back, I think, a week ago, that Ephraim Asiata was on the edge, and he got double-teamed by 2 offensive linemen out on the edge. And I love Ephraim, but if he weighs more than 220 pounds right now, I'd be stunned, because if he's 220 pounds, I'm going to be a lot bigger than I currently am, and I ain't skinny right now, but you get the point. He actually held his own better than I would have anticipated going up against essentially 600 plus pounds of beef trying to get him out of the way. He anchored down, just got underneath, used his leverage, and I thought held the edge relatively well, considering, like I said, he had 2 hog molly offensive linemen trying to root him out of that spot. I think it was indicative of the work that this defensive line has done. The coaching has been top-notch. Gary Andersen and Chad Kauha'aha'a, who have coached all over this country, are 2 of the more proven defensive line coaches. And guys like Sione Puha, who played at an extremely high level, coached at Utah, and obviously has got a lot of experience he can lend. And then Kelly Poppinga, who might be the most BYU-esque proponent I've met outside of Kalani Sitake on this staff, have proven to be really, really fast learners coaching up their positions. If what I am, once again, observing from my perch is that who have expressed that I am very, very concerned about BYU's defensive line, I very well might have to eat my words, and I would be more than happy to if it truly is as good as I am being led to believe right now. So very interesting times. Now, I talked about the work that this defensive line and the entire program for BYU has done a lot of work in the weight room. Well, the mastermind behind it all was kind enough to take some time to talk with me. Ryan Phillis, BYU's head of strength and conditioning. He talked to me one-on-one about what has gone into transforming multiple guys' bodies inside the BYU football program, the strength gains that they have been crowing about, Jay Hill most notably. What has gone into all of that? Well, you'll hear from the man himself coming up in just a moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Of course, all summer long, FanDuel is here for you guys. Whether you're watching a baseball game, you've been enjoying the Olympics like I have, you've been watching, any number seemingly of those off the beaten path sports that happen to be going on in the summer, you can enjoy all of that. And if you want to dream up an incredible bet that you think could have like a parlay or just want one game that you think you can score on, you can do all that inside the FanDuel app and let you dream up those bets and cast them as soon as you want to, frankly. And all summer long, FanDuel is also sweetening the pot for you guys. They're hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. The best part is you have to head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer right now. So once again, that's FanDuel.com. Start having some fun with Major League Baseball, futures odds on the NFL, NBA futures, college football when it comes to BYU or BYU basketball. Anything and everything under the sun is available to you guys at FanDuel.com. And of course, it's all once again brought to you. Wow, I am butchering this, but nonetheless, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, please start making Locked On College Football your second listen of the day after you finish up this show. Spencer McLaughlin is getting you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season, ever-changing landscape in college athletics, conference realignment, transfer portal, NIL. You guys know the whole storyline. If you want the big picture view of it all, check out Locked On College Football wherever you get your podcast. Is also available on YouTube, and it's all brought to you in part by our friends over the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right. Jay Hill has been unabashed in saying that guys have gained 30 pounds, 35 pounds, 40 pounds, particularly when it comes to the bench press. And he has pointed directly to Ryan Phillis as BYU strength and conditioning coach and his cavalcade of coaches alongside him, along with BYU sports science team, and being the reason why BYU has seen these strength gains. I'm going to be very blunt. I am astounded by some of the numbers I am hearing about BYU's gains in the weight room this past offseason. I have it on very good authority from a certain lineman, I will not name him, I'll keep it anonymous, who has said that he has gained more than 70 pounds in the squat. This young man, so far as I'm aware, squatted 600 pounds, 600, multiple times in the weight room earlier on when they were doing strength testing with Ryan Phillis. Incredible gains being made in the BYU football program. Well, what has led to all of it? Well, I'm going to ask the man himself, and I had the conversation with him at Photo Day with Ryan Phillis, BYU head strength and conditioning coach, about what he is doing to see these, and we use the term gains, but they're absolute gains that the BYU football program has picked up this offseason. What went into all of it, and how is he going about it? Let's let the man answer himself. So here you go, my conversation with Ryan Phillis, BYU Strength and Conditioning.
Ryan, we were talking with Jay Hill, and he referenced multiple guys who had gained 30 pounds and 35 pounds in various lists. I think mainly bench is what he was referring to, and he credited you and your strength and conditioning staff with helping get that. How did you go about that this offseason?
Yeah, so first thing, my staff's awesome. Mm-hmm. You know, I have a whole new staff. They're bought into what Coach Kalani wants. And we had to get guys bigger, faster, stronger this year. And it's a testament to not only my staff, but mostly the players. The players bought in. And that's the biggest thing, is when the players buy into the nutrition, the strength staff, and what we're trying to do, you know, they start seeing those improvements, and that's what we're trying to do on long run. So,
how big has it been to have like a full-time nutritionist, and you have guys making food for these guys in the facility to, I guess actually fuel them the right way?
It's awesome. It's everything we've needed in here in BYU. Dan Wilcox does an awesome job. He's got 17 Traegers outside. He smokes 200 and
I've seen him do this, by the way.
200 and I think 56 pounds of meat every single day for the guys. So there's rice, there's veggies, there's actual meals. He has New York strips, ribeyes, salmon, chicken, whatever you want for the guys. So it's awesome. It's been everything that we needed here. So.
As a guy who owns a Traeger, I can only imagine how many pellets he goes through on a weekly basis.
A ton. I'm sure he has a discount. So
he's got it. He's got a frequent buyer club, I guess, at this point.
So.
Your role obviously is very important because you get to have more contact with the players during the offseason than most of the position coaches. What is your philosophy just in terms of you're trying to set like a mentality, a culture for the program overall?
Yeah. First and foremost, the culture is set by Coach Kalani and what he wants, and it's echoed down to me. And so my first priority is to echo it to those players as much as I possibly can. So doing so, we split the guys up into squadrons. They have team leaders, and it's a daily accountability system to whether it's waking up on time, not being late, community service, adding points for your team or subtracting points for your team. Even through competition stuff we do on the field, there's points added and subtracted to that team, and ultimately there's going to be an end winner. So that's how we kind of hold guys accountable throughout the whole offseason. But ultimately that culture and that standard is set by Coach Kalani, and I echo that, and I kind of implement things to let that thrive. So,
talking with the players both during spring and also just over the summer, they talked about the workouts you had, and you had teams essentially that they put together. Was that something that you talk about, like in the end, did you actually announce a winner, like which team won that, or was that just something you guys kept together throughout the months?
Yeah, so we kept that together. Actually, there's a winner, there's a winter winner.
Got it, okay.
And then there's a winter loser, and then there was a summer winner, summer loser. At the end of the winter, they actually drafted new teams.
Okay.
Because, transfer portal, guys coming in, and they draft teams based on, how many infractions the other teammates had throughout the offseason. But that gives our leaders a chance to mentor to the younger guys and mentor to guys who don't have it quite yet. We're not going to have it all the time, but that gives those leaders a chance to mentor to those guys and to get them on the right track before we hit season. And so that's why we group up in the squadrons and we do that. So.
Now, the social media team put out a video of you guys running through workouts over at the stadium, and there was a comment in there, hey, keep doing what you're doing, we'll go 5-7 again. I think I'm misquoting it directly, but has that kind of been the message all off season long?
One of our messages was keep a chip on the shoulder. Okay. And we're flying under the radar, and that's okay. Yeah. We don't want it any other way. So, that's the motto, was keep the chip on the shoulder. Let's pay attention to us and what we do best as a program, and let all the outside and the naysayers say what they want to say, and that's all right. Because we have each other, and that's what Coach Kalani wants, and that's what we thrive off of. So,
last thing for you is obviously strength and conditioning is always changing philosophically. How much studying do you have to do to keep up with the quote-unquote times? A
ton.
Okay.
A ton. There's new studies, there's new research out every single day. And so my job as a strength and conditioning professional is to research that, to study that, and to implement that. If I don't apply that, what is researched and what's studied, then I'm not doing my job, and I'm not putting these guys in the best position that I can be putting them in. So it's a daily process, and also I lean on my staff a lot. I have a very experienced staff. Yeah. I have a really good staff, and I lean on them for their advice because they've been to multiple places, and I only got one set of eyes, so I need everybody that I can count on. So.
One small follow-up alongside that, how important is it to have a full complement of strength and conditioning coaches alongside you?
With the team this size and what we're trying to do, and how many things we got going on, whether it's the point system, whether it's weighing guys in, weighing guys out. I have a strength coach for line, I have a strength coach for combo, for skill, and I run different groups. I run a volume group, a strength group, a velocity group, and then there's a ton of things that go into this, so it's awesome. That's what we need, is a full staff, and these guys work their butts off to do so.
There you have it, BYU strength and conditioning coach Ryan Phillis, and you heard him break it down. He said that, hey, we've put a lot of work in. He talked about the Traegers that they are cooking up, ribeyes, tri-tip. They got everything. I can tell you, I have seen the spread. The training table is, we like to call it in college athletics, for BYU football players. It is truly impressive. And tip of the cap to BYU administration for investing in this, bringing in nutritionists, an entire staff. They've got the full complement of 5 strength and conditioning coaches. You've got Dr. Skylar Main as well as Colby Clausen working on the sports science side of things right alongside Ryan Phillis in terms of gauging the workload for each one of these guys. The other thing about this, and Ryan may have referred to it, he talked about weighing in, weighing out. Connor Pay also talked about it earlier on this week when he was on with us, actually yesterday on the podcast. BYU players have to weigh themselves in every morning and weigh themselves out every night when they leave the facility. It is incredible what they're doing to help these young men transform their bodies. And I say transform because I talked about David Latu earlier on today's podcast. He looks noticeably trimmer than he was a year ago, but I can tell you, he is a far better defensive tackle today than he was. Maybe I wouldn't even know how many pounds he lost, but he looks noticeably slimmer. He's not the only guy like that. I can tell you LJ Martin, when LJ Martin walked out to spring camp earlier this year, the roster told us he was up from 205 pounds to 225. And I was like, okay, is this BYU inflating the numbers? And then out trots number 27 himself. I'm like, nope, that's a legit number, another 20 pounds added onto that young man's frame. Ryan Phillis and his staff have worked just a literal miracle, it feels like, with this roster. Will it benefit BYU? Will they be able to hold up better when it comes to in-game competition? That remains to be seen, but strength numbers absolutely do not lie. When you're stronger, you're going to be able to hold up better. You're going to be better able to handle the rigors and the just overall nature of a Power 4 schedule in the Big 12. So, Ryan Phillis, tip of the cap to you because it feels like across the board. And like I said, that's just one line I told you about with that 70-pound gain in the squats. Right. It's just been incredible to consider because Jay Hill has talked about guys every time he talks to the media about one guy gaining 30 pounds on the bench or this guy over here getting a major boost in his squat numbers. Ryan Phillis is the man, the myth, the legend, and props to him for transforming BYU football quite literally from the inside out. All right, coming up here in just a minute, we'll finish up today's show on a little more of a somber note. Don't want to go out on a negative note, but got to acknowledge the elephant in the room. BYU is not having a good run of late when it comes to their football recruiting. What is it going to take for BYU to get back on the right side of things when it comes to their recruiting? We'll delve into that as we close up shop right here on Locked On Cougars. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at GameTime. I love going to Major League Baseball games. Now, I admit I have not been to a ton of MLB ballparks. I've been to, I think, 5 MLB parks in my life. But the thing is, I keep going back because they're just absolutely incredible environments. That's what I love about that. If you want to go to MLB games this summer, there's still time remaining, you can do it with our friends over at GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace in Major League Baseball, which makes getting your tickets faster and easier, and the prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch with killer last-minute deals. All-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying your MLB tickets, and they're here for you as a fan. The best part is you can go and find any game you seemingly want to go to. If you happen to be traveling to Southern California, you want to go out to Chavez Ravine, go to a Dodgers game, or you're traveling by the Big A down there in Anaheim to watch the Angels, or no matter where you're at in the country, they've got the options for you guys. Last-minute tickets, flash deals, and zone deals, a myriad of different ways to go about it. And also, the best part is the lowest price guarantee in the market. If you find a lower price, they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you can find a lower price than our friends at GameTime. So download GameTime app today. You can take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with our friends at GameTime. Create that account with GameTime. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and save $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Thank you once again for being Locked On Cougars, your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? I passed along a bevy of notes of what I learned from BYU football practice last night, and they went out to our Locked On Cougars Insider group. The link is in the show notes, whether you're watching and or listening to this. It's a 14-day free trial. That'll get you essentially to the start of the college football season to see if it's the right option for you. I'm passing along updates of what I'm hearing about BYU football and everything else I have for you guys, and it goes directly to your phone in the form of a text message. It does not get much simpler than that. that. You're not having to go to a message board or log into a website to get the inside intel that you crave as a Cougar fan. So join us on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group, and hope you guys will be a part of it. It's the best part is you can have one-on-one conversations with myself via text message. So join us today. All right. Before we go on today's show, let's talk about Aaron Dunn. Now, this big offensive lineman, a 4-star prospect, the number 2 prospect out of the state of Utah in the upcoming recruiting cycle, he opted for BYU's arch rival, the University of Utah, yesterday. Now, word trickled out ahead of his announcement that he was down to 3 finalists. Those finalists, Oregon, USC, and Utah. Well, it was not even a month ago that BYU was considered to be one of the 5 finalists for his in the running for Aaron Dunn's signature in terms of his verbal commitment. Obviously, later on, he'll put pen to paper. But BYU fell out of it. Now, I don't proclaim to have the inside scoop on that. I would not give a tip of the cap to guys like Jeff Hansen if they can fill you guys in on why he opted to go elsewhere and BYU dropped out of the race. But I can tell you, it's just another hit for BYU on the recruiting front. Now, there is still time for BYU to recover. There's absolutely time. There are other offensive linemen out there that BYU is pursuing. Siosua Vete, his brother, is a current commit to BYU. Siosua is committed to Stanford. Could BYU work with his brother Kalepi to get him to flip over to BYU? That'd be a nice get if they can pull that off. There's also another Pay brother out there in the ether, Austin Pay, and Connor's a regular guest on this podcast. I am going to be very upfront with you guys. I very rarely ask Connor for any information because it's something that he has expressed on this podcast is that it is Austin Pay's cycle and his opportunity in life to determine where he's going to play. It doesn't hurt that Gary, their father, played at BYU and ultimately went on to play in the NFL for a short time with the 49ers. It doesn't hurt that Connor Pay is well on his way to the NFL after this season. Trevor Pay, and by the way, I'll tell you what I've seen from Trevor working with the second and third string offensive lines is that Trevor is coming home off of a mission is actually showing quite well for an RM that did not get home all that long ago. Is Austin Pay in line to follow the family legacy to Provo? Only time will tell. But as it stands right now, BYU is on a bit of a losing streak when it comes to the recruiting. A number of high-level athletes that BYU would have loved to have had, and I know that you can say that BYU didn't want Aaron Dunn. I can tell you BYU absolutely did want Aaron Dunn. Why wouldn't you want that? 6'8", 6'9", whatever he is, just a prototypical offensive tackle prospect, and he opts to go to the University of Utah. That is a hit to BYU any which way you want to cut it, because he is growing up and playing in the shadow of Brigham Young University. A Spanish Fork is a stone's throw away relative to Provo, and he ultimately opts to bypass Provo, which is what, 10 miles max from his house probably, to go 50 miles north and play for the University of Utah. And that just adds to the recent run for BYU. I think Anusi Tamoya-Peau, who committed to Stanford. You can go on down that list of late. It's been nothing but other guys picking other schools, and they're not BYU. Well, what's it going to take for BYU to become the IT program and to get back into winning some of these recruiting battles? Well, first off, I think the biggest thing is they've got is just to get one guy, it feels like, to take the plunge. The other thing, because I talk about one guy, you can get an influential prospect who wants to be that quote-unquote recruiter for the rest of his recruiting class to make the ultimate decision to join BYU. That could go a long way to helping that individual start to recruit his fellow classmates and say, hey, BYU is where you want to be. Is one of those guys in BYU's class? TBD, because they got 16 commits right now. Could any one of them step up? Hopefully. The other thing that BYU needs to do this fall is show progress with this football program. Right now, let's be honest, BYU's on a 5-game losing streak. They started a season 5-2 last year and then lost 5 straight and came agonizingly close. Remember, it was a double overtime loss to Oregon State following a very tough loss to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State. Man, I butchered those. I got Pac-12 on the brain or something. But speaking of Oklahoma State, a double overtime loss in the week previous to that Oklahoma game that slipped away from BYU. They had a chance to get to bowl eligibility. They did not do that, and it has been shoved in BYU's players' faces all offseason long that they are a losing club, that they are going to struggle in the Big 12. They're going to be no good. They're quote-unquote bums out there. if BYU can get back to a winning way, if they start the season 3-0 in the non-conference slate, pick up some momentum and carry it over into Big 12 play, and let's say they reel off, let's say a 7-5 season or heaven forbid an 8-4 type campaign, that would help BYU on the recruiting front. Players want to play for winning programs. They want to go places they know they're going to have success. Right now, BYU's perception is they're a struggling club in the Big 12, whereas in the case of University of Utah, they're the Big 12 favorite. That's the simple truth of the matter that BYU is going up against right now. Could it change in an instant? Yes, it could. But the last 2 months, roughly, for BYU in the recruiting front, it's been a long dry spell for the Cougars. And that's tough to swallow because, once again, the athletes that BYU has been pursuing in this recruiting cycle, a lot of them are in-state guys. A lot of them are highly thought of prospects that BYU would absolutely love to have in their program. And they've picked elsewhere. That's tough to stomach if you're a Cougar fan. I completely understand that. But it is going to take BYU proving that they can go out there and win on the gridiron, number one overall. Winning will solve a lot of the issues BYU has in the recruiting front right now. There's also an element when it comes to NIL. I believe that BYU is as competitive as anybody when they want to be on the NIL front. We've seen that with BYU basketball. They're flashing cash left, right, and center in the basketball program. And the conversations I've had with people involved with BYU on the football front, they believe that they have the requisite funds if they need them to go out and attract guys. But players want to know they're going to go to a place where they can develop. Aaron Dunn's a bit of an interesting case. I'll just also add this. He's an offensive tackle, and BYU has a nice run over the past 3 NFL drafts. Or that's not the last 3 NFL drafts. The last 3 left tackles from BYU have all been drafted into the NFL. And if Caleb Etienne, the hype about him is real, it could be 4 for 4. You'd think that would be a pretty attractive proposition to a guy like Aaron Dunn. And like I said, I'm not going to proclaim to know why he didn't pick BYU because I don't know. I'll be in the interest of full disclosure. I don't know why he didn't pick BYU. But I think that BYU's got a pretty compelling pitch for a young man like that. And the fact that the playing time option, which I believe would be a big conversation for him next year with guys like Braden Keim and Caleb Etienne exiting the program, to me, it comes down to that they want to play for a winning program. And right now, Utah in particular has got that rep in state. So it is a tough pill to swallow to watch BYU struggling as much as they are on the recruiting front. But the hope is in the relatively not too distant future, BYU can pick up some recruiting wins. And if they want to pick up those recruiting wins, well, I think some just overall wins on the football field would help really get that rolling here. It's my PSA as we close out the week here on the podcast. All right. BYU scrimmages tomorrow. No media availability afterwards, which is a little bit of a bummer. But alas, we will be out there on Monday to talk with Kalani Sitake and players and get their reaction to the scrimmage, learn what we can learn about it because we won't see it. If any of you happen to be going to the scrimmage, you could hit me up in the social media channels or via email and say, hey, Jake, I got a full report for you. I'm not going to reveal my sources, but I'd be happy to accept your information if you have it out there. But nonetheless, besides that, thank you for all of your support of the podcast. It's been a marvelous week. We've had a lot of good response. Big ups to guys like Drake Toll as well as Connor Pay for being a part of the podcast this week. And as we head into the season, you're going to see more cross collaboration on that front with regards to our Locked On hosts as well. So big thank you to all of you for your support every single day. And most importantly, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first view and or listen of the day. And a big thank you to all of you once again who we like to call everydayers as well. And until next time, if it's Monday, if it's tomorrow, who knows when it's going to be, we'll be right here with you guys on Locked On Cougars. See ya.